The night I opened the door to him, I didn't know I was letting trouble into my life. He stood there with the kind of smile that could trick a tired heart into believing again. Ethan, that was his name. Daniel's new tutor. His voice was calm when he introduced himself. Too calm, almost practiced. Something in me wanted to shut the door, but I didn't. I stepped aside and let him in. I watched him carefully, the way I do with everyone. Pain makes you suspicious, and I've had more than my share. My husband's death had left me raw, and even before that, his betrayal had turned me into someone who second-guessed kindness. Trust was no longer a word I could say without choking on it. Daniel came downstairs, hands shoved deep in his pockets, hair messy like he hadn't bothered to comb it. For weeks, my son had been a ghost of himself, silent, bitter, locked in a world I couldn't reach. But when he saw Ethan, his shoulders lifted just slightly. His eyes lit up, if only a little. And then, shockingly, he smiled. I stood frozen in the kitchen doorway as they sat at the dining table. I pretended to wipe the counter, but I couldn't stop listening. Ethan didn't sound like a teacher. He sounded like someone who actually cared. He asked questions instead of lecturing, leaned in when Daniel spoke, and laughed at my son's sarcasm like it was the best thing he'd heard all day. Then, I heard something I hadn't heard in months. Daniel laughing. My throat tightened. I nearly dropped the plate in my hands. Since Mark's death, laughter had been erased from our house, like joy had been packed away in the coffin with him. But now, this stranger was somehow pulling my son back into the light. I told myself not to notice the steadiness in Ethan's voice, not to notice how patient he was, how his presence felt like it belonged here, not to notice the way my own heart beat faster when our eyes met across the table for a fleeting second. When he finally left, Daniel went upstairs humming, the sound of it echoing down the hall. I stood by the door long after Ethan was gone, my hand still on the knob, my pulse still racing. I whispered to myself, "It's nothing, just gratitude." But deep down, I already knew it was the start of something I might not survive. I told myself I wouldn't think about him again. I lied. Every night after Ethan first came, I replayed the sound of his voice in my head. The way he laughed with Daniel, the way he'd looked at me for a split second, as though he'd seen right through the walls I'd built. It was nothing, I told myself. Just a tutor doing his job. But the more I repeated those words, the less I believed them. Ethan became a regular presence in our house. Twice a week, then 3 times. He'd arrive with a worn backpack slung over one shoulder, his shirt sleeves rolled up, always with that calm voice that seemed to put Daniel at ease. My son started to change. His grades improved, yes, but it was more than that. Daniel started coming out of his room more. He'd talk at dinner, sometimes even smile. And every time he did, a small part of me felt grateful to Ethan in ways I couldn't admit out loud. But there was danger in gratitude. Gratitude could turn into something else, something messier, something I had no business feeling for a man 10 years younger than me. A man who was here for my son, not me. One evening, as I set tea on the table, Ethan caught me staring. His eyes held mine for a moment too long. My chest tightened, and I quickly turned away, pretending to fuss with the cups. He said nothing, but I could feel the weight of that silence pressing against me. Later that night, when Daniel had gone to bed, I stayed behind to clear the books. Ethan lingered. "You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders," he said softly. His words hit me like a blow. No one had noticed in years. No one had cared enough to ask. For a second, I almost told him the truth, that I was exhausted, that grief still clawed at me every night, that I didn't know how to move on. But instead, I forced a smile and shook my head. He didn't believe me. I saw it in the way his brow furrowed, in the way his lips parted as if he wanted to say more. But he didn't. He packed his books and left, Leaving me trembling in the kitchen. As I stood there alone, the storm outside began to rattle the windows. But it was nothing compared to the storm building inside me. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. It only takes one wrong moment to destroy a wall you've spent years building. That moment came on a night when the sky broke open with rain and the power cut out while Ethan was mid-sentence with Daniel. The light snapped off, plunging us into silence. For a second, I heard nothing but the storm and my own heartbeat. Daniel groaned, fumbling for his phone flashlight. I lit a few candles from the cupboard, the flame flickering shadows across the walls. When I carried them into the dining room, I found Ethan sitting with his hands folded, waiting calmly. As though he'd seen this 1,000 times before. Guess math will have to wait, he said with a smile. Daniel laughed, shrugging as he headed upstairs to grab a blanket. Don't start without me, he called back, disappearing down the hall. And just like that, I was alone with Ethan. The air shifted. I could feel it the way you feel static before lightning strikes. His eyes met mine in the candlelight, and everything inside me twisted. For a second, I wasn't a widow or a mother or a woman clinging to control. I was just me. A woman who hadn't been touched in years. A woman who wanted. I turned away quickly, forcing myself to breathe, but the silence pressed on me. I could feel his gaze, steady, patient, almost daring me to say something. My hands trembled as I adjusted the candle on the table, pretending it needed fixing. Are you all right? He asked softly. His voice was gentle, but it cut too deep. I'm fine, I whispered, though it was a lie and we both knew it. The thunder rolled outside, shaking the windows. Inside, the silence grew thicker. My body betrayed me. I leaned closer, too close, my heart pounding so hard I thought he might hear it. His lips parted slightly, as though he'd been holding back words. Or maybe something else. And then Daniel's footsteps came thundering back down the stairs. I jumped away, nearly knocking over the candle. My pulse raced, shame flooding me as though I'd just been caught stealing. Daniel tossed the blanket on the chair, oblivious, chattering about the storm. Ethan leaned back, his expression unreadable, though I caught the faintest flicker in his eyes when he glanced at me. That night, lying awake in the dark, I whispered into the silence, "What have I just done?" Because I knew I had already crossed a line, even if no one else saw it. The night I learned Ethan could lie was the night I stopped feeling safe in my own house. I didn't mean to overhear. I was in the hallway folding laundry when his voice cut through the quiet. Not the gentle, patient voice I'd grown used to, but low, hard, and edged like steel. She trusts me too much. This will work out, he said into his phone. Every muscle in my body locked. Who? Who trusted him? My chest thudded painfully as I edged closer to the living room. The candlelight flickered against the wall, and there he was, his back to me, jaw tight, shoulders stiff, a stranger in my home. Yes. She won't suspect a thing. My blood ran cold. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself, breath shallow. My mind raced. Was he talking about me? About Daniel? What wouldn't I suspect? I wanted to rush in, demand answers, but fear rooted me to the spot. A floorboard creaked under my foot. Ethan spun around. His eyes scanned the dark hallway before landing on me. Everything all right? His tone was light, too light. I forced my lips into something that might have been a smile, though my hands trembled around the pile of clothes. Laundry, I whispered. My voice didn't sound like mine. He slipped his phone into his pocket, walking toward me slowly. That was my sister, he said, casual, rehearsed. Family issues. I searched his face for truth, but his eyes wouldn't stay on mine. They slid away, unfocused, like someone hiding a card behind their back. For a moment, we just stood there, me clutching the laundry like a shield, him smiling too easily. The silence was unbearable. Before I could push further, Daniel appeared at the top of the stairs. "Mom? Ethan? Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Ethan answered smoothly, turning toward my son with the same warm expression that had fooled me before. In an instant, the hard edge in his voice was gone, replaced by the calm tutor who laughed at mistakes and encouraged patience. But I had heard it. The mask had slipped. That night, after they finished and Ethan finally left, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Every memory of his smile twisted into something false. My chest ached with shame for trusting him, for letting my heart skip when he looked at me. But as I replayed his words in my head, one question refused to leave me. If Ethan wasn't who I thought he was, what was he hiding from me? I should have cut him out after that night. I should have told Daniel no more lessons, no more visits. But I did single quotes T. Instead. I opened the door to him again, pretending it was for my son's sake. But deep down, I knew I wasn't just doing it for Daniel anymore. I was doing it for me. Ethan had become a constant in our house. His voice filled the silence that used to suffocate me. His laughter pulled Daniel out of the shadows of grief. Even I, the woman who had sworn never to trust again, found myself listening for the sound of his knock, my heart racing when it came. Daniel's grades were climbing. But what mattered more was that my son was changing. He joked more. He asked for help without hesitation. He even teased me sometimes like he used to when Mark was still alive. One night, he caught me smiling while Ethan explained a problem. "You like him, don't you?" Daniel said with a grin. I laughed it off, but my face burned. That boy saw too much, and maybe he wasn't wrong. Because every time Ethan's eyes lingered on me, I felt something stir inside me I thought had died with my marriage. Still, the doubt never fully left me. The memory of that phone call haunted me in the quiet hours. His words were played over and over. "She trusts me too much. She won't suspect a thing." Some nights, I nearly convinced myself I'd misheard, that maybe he had meant something else. Other nights, I swore he was playing me, just like Mark once had. But when Ethan leaned over Daniel's notebook with infinite patience, when he laughed at my son's clumsy jokes, when he stayed a few minutes longer after lessons to ask if I was okay, my suspicion melted into something softer, something dangerous. That evening in the garden, after Daniel went to bed, Ethan and I stood under the fading light. The air was still heavy with the scent of roses. He turned to me suddenly. "You've been through hell," he said quietly. "I can see it. But you're stronger than you know." The words cracked something inside me. For a heartbeat, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in him. I should have walked away. But instead, I let myself fall a little deeper, and I had no idea how much it would cost me. The truth doesn't always knock. It kicks the door in and leaves you bleeding. That night was supposed to be ordinary. Ethan had just finished a lesson, Daniel was upstairs, and I was walking him to the door. I remember thinking his smile felt different, warmer, like something unspoken hung between us. For one reckless second, I thought maybe I wasn't imagining it. Then the knock came. When I opened the door, a young woman stood there, rain dripping from her hair, fury burning in her eyes. She looked at Ethan first, not me. "So this is where you've been hiding." She spat. My stomach dropped. Ethan froze. His face, always calm and steady, twisted with something sharp guilt. "Clara," he whispered. I didn't need to ask who she was. The way she looked at him, the venom in her voice, it was obvious. "I should have known you'd land on your feet." "You always do," she said, her eyes flicking toward me. "Does she know? Does she know you're broke? That you're nothing without me? That you're using her to rebuild what I took from you?" Her words hit me like knives. Broke, using me. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. "Stop," Ethan said quickly, stepping forward. Clara, this isn't... Don't lie to me. Don't lie to her, Clara snapped, her voice rising. He's good at that, you know. He fooled me for years. I staggered back, my hand gripping the edge of the door. Is this true? I demanded, my voice cracking. Ethan turned to me, desperation in his eyes. Yes, I lost everything after her. But I'm not here for that. I'm here because of you. Because of Daniel. Because you needed a roof over your head. Clara cut in. Because you needed someone desperate enough to believe you. Daniel's footsteps pounded down the stairs. He stared at us, confusion twisting into rage as he pieced together the fragments. You're using us? His voice shook with betrayal. No, Ethan said fiercely, eyes darting between us. I swear, it's not like that. But the damage was done. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I saw was the man I'd let into my home, into my son's life, standing exposed under the weight of his past. That night, when the door slammed shut behind him, I collapsed onto the floor. Sobbing into my hands, I had given him the one thing I swore. I'd never give anyone again my trust, and I knew I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life when someone disappears. Silence speaks louder than any lie. Ethan stopped coming after that night. No calls, no messages, no knock at the door. The chair he used to sit in at the dining table stayed empty, the air heavier for it. Part of me wanted to be relieved, but all I felt was hollow. Betrayed, yes. Angry, yes. But beneath it all, there was still that ache I couldn't shut off. No matter how much I hated myself for it, Daniel didn't forgive me so easily. He barely spoke to me, slamming doors and locking himself away in his room. I'd failed him again. I'd let a stranger into our lives, and now my son carried that betrayal like fresh weight on top of all his grief. Watching him shut me out was almost worse than losing Ethan. Almost Dot, and then there was Clara. I thought she had won. She had come into my house like a storm, ripped away the fragile hope I had built, and left with the satisfaction of destruction. But life has a way of peeling masks away, slowly, painfully. Neighbors whispered about her, about how she stalked Ethan even after their breakup, about the lies she told to smear his name, about the debts she left behind. One by one, people began to see her not as a victim, but as something else entirely bitter. Unstable, dangerous Dot. It should have made me feel better. It didn't, because even as Clara's world unraveled, mine didn't mend. My nights were filled with silence too loud to bear. And then, one evening, an envelope slipped under my door. My hands shook as I picked it up. Ethan's handwriting. I tore it open and read. I never lied about what you mean to me. I came into your house broken, yes, but what I found there was more than I deserved. You and Daniel gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know what I feel for you is real. If I have to walk away for you to heal, I will. But I'll never stop caring. I sat at the kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands. Part of me wanted to burn it, erase every trace of him. Another part wanted to hold it against my chest and believe every word. But belief is dangerous, and I knew if I gave in, I might lose everything all over again. Love doesn't destroy you. It's the silence that does. Daniel had been silent for weeks. Silent at dinner, silent in the mornings, silent whenever I tried to reach him. Then the silence snapped. I got a call from the school. My son had been in a fight. When I arrived, the principal's office was tense. Daniel sat with a bruise blooming across his cheek, his fists still clenched. He looked like Mark in that moment, stubborn, furious, carrying the world's weight alone. He mocked me, Daniel muttered when pressed. His voice cracked. He said my mom was sleeping with her young boyfriend. My stomach dropped. Shame and guilt twisted through me. My choices, my weakness had reached him. And now he was paying for it. I tried to speak, but before I could, the door opened. Ethan walked in. I froze. He looked different, more worn, as though the weeks had carved lines into his face. But his eyes, when they landed on Daniel, were steady, protective. "I'm here for him," Ethan said firmly, nodding toward my son. "This fight wasn't just his fault. He's been through enough. Punishing him won't fix it." The principal frowned, unimpressed. But Ethan didn't waver. He stood tall, speaking with a conviction I hadn't seen before. He wasn't defending himself. He wasn't here for me. He was here for Daniel. Watching him, something inside me broke. Because even after the lies, even after Clara's venom, even after my walls had gone back up, he still came back. Not to beg me, not to fix us. He came back for the one person who mattered most. Daniel glared at him at first, but I saw the way my son's shoulders eased, just slightly, as Ethan spoke on his behalf. It was a small crack in the anger, but it was there. When we left the office, Daniel walked ahead, refusing to look at me. Ethan lingered behind. "You don't have to forgive me," he said quietly, "but I'll never stop showing up for him." I wanted to scream at him, to demand the truth he had never fully given me. But all I could do was stare at the man I should have cut out of our lives, yet who somehow kept proving himself in ways that mattered most. And for the first time, I wondered if I was the one who had been blind all along. Every love story begins with a choice. This was mine. For weeks, I avoided him. I told myself it was for Daniel, for me, for the fragile safety I'd built around us. But the truth was uglier. I was afraid. Afraid that if I let Ethan in, he would leave scars like Mark did. Afraid that my heart wouldn't survive another betrayal. But fear can only hold you so long before it rots you from the inside. It was early morning when I finally called him. The sun was rising, painting the sky gold. He arrived quietly, almost cautious, as though he wasn't sure I'd really want him there. We stood in the kitchen, the silence pressing in. I gripped the edge of the counter just to keep steady. "I need to know," I said, my voice shaking. "Did you ever use me? Did you ever step into this house with any intention other than the truth?" His jaw tightened. For once, there was no smoothness, no practiced calm, just raw honesty. "Yes," he said. My heart stopped. But then he went on. "Yes, I stepped into this house broken. I was a mess, desperate to start over. But I swear to you, not once did I see you as a lifeline. You became something I didn't expect, someone I couldn't fake. What I feel for you, it's the only real thing I have left." Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to hate him, to cling to the anger that kept me safe. But I couldn't. Not when every word cut open the truth I tried so hard to deny. Daniel shuffled into the room, silent as ever. He looked at Ethan, then at me. And for the first time, my son didn't glare. He didn't slam a door or spit words like knives. He simply asked, "Do you love him?" The question hung heavy. I closed my eyes, my chest tight, my heart pounding. The answer was terrifying and undeniable. "Yes," I whispered. The room shifted. Daniel exhaled, a soft sound of release, and for the first time since Mark's death, I felt like we were breathing the same air again. Ethan's eyes filled with something unguarded hope. I stepped forward, my hands trembling as they found his. I fell in love with my son's tutor, and though the world may never understand, I looked at him, at Daniel, at the fragile beginning of something new. I finally chose to live again. If you've ever been broken, betrayed, or forced to start over, then you know how heavy those choices feel. Tell me, what would you have done in my place? Would you forgive him, or would you walk away?